All right. Welcome back, folks, to the Rise and Bind podcast. I am your host, Chris Langille, founder of Advisor Evolved. Hope you guys are crushing it today. I'm pumped today to be joined by a colleague, Mr. Jack Newman of UKB Marketing. Jack is in the UK, and I'm pumped, man, to have you on. We're talking about meta advertising today, and I wanted to get you on, man, because I know it's a big part of your operation at UKB. And I know as somebody that I kind of view as a authority on the topic. And also we'll talk about like the tracking setup and sort of the technical stuff that goes into the back end of doing it correctly. But I wanted to get you on because we're constantly in my world talking about search engine optimization, and clients are coming to us all the time asking for SEO services. And it's a conversation that we have all the time. And I wanted to get you on because you have probably a different perspective to share. But tell me, man, a little bit about your agency and kind of the client demographic that you serve, because you're not working with insurance agents like I am. Tell me a little bit about you, man.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks for the intro. So yeah, like you say, I'm based in the UK and I run a digital agency, and we focus on a couple of different demographics really. So we serve kind of two main niches. One is e-commerce brands, so people selling physical products, typically lower ticket items, something around 20 to 50, maybe up to £100 per item. So kind of fairly low AOVs. And then we also serve the digital product space. So these are info product brands. So people selling education through courses or done with you or done for you programs. And that's typically higher ticket, ranging from around £1,000 all the way up to maybe something like £8,000, £10,000. Just depends really. And they typically have different levels of offers that kind of blend into that. So either way, regardless of the two different customers that we serve, we're basically delivering the same type of thing, and that is a sale or a lead, like a qualified call or a qualified lead into their system that later becomes a sale. So it's very performance driven. We're a performance agency, and to get those results, we are using paid advertising. So our whole kind of take on our services, the whole suite that we offer, is basically going to be paid advertising. So we build the funnels, but we do all the kind of the source of traffic that we use is all through paid. And we don't really do anything organic. And we've been like that since the beginning. So that's really where we've seen our ability to drive meaningful short-term growth for clients and long-term off the back of it. But really kind of coming into them and giving them a meaningful outcome in a short period of time. Yeah, that's us. That's kind of what we do.
That's awesome. So a couple of good things that you just said. Short-term results. And I don't mean by in any way to poo-poo SEO. It's a great thing that once it's working, it can deliver results. But to your point about the short-term results, like I don't know about you, but like when people ask us about SEO, it's like, okay, what are your objectives? Like, do you want to get customers now or do you want to get customers later? And I think most business owners will tell you, we want the customers now. We want the leads now. We don't want to invest, $2,000, $3,000 a month or more, and then have this like 6 month or year or maybe even longer ramp up period. Do you run into that with any of your like e-commerce clients that are trying to do organic stuff and you have to kind of like educate?
Yeah, we do. Your clients will ask us, do you guys do SEO? And a lot of clients will feel like it's something that's needed. And I think the truth is, all of these things have their place. So we're not an SEO agency, but SEO, is incredibly effective when done correctly, and can be a tremendous source of revenue and very, very high returns. But there's also, like you say, an onboarding phase and like a ramp up phase. And my understanding of SEO is it does take, one, it does take money. Like it's not a free activity, obviously, unless you're trying to do anything yourself, and then it could become low cost, but that's with a massive trade-off. But for companies that are looking to, have agencies and partners to work with them on these things, there is going to be a cost involved, and there is going to be a time component to really getting that return. The beauty of using paid advertising is it kind of shortcuts a lot of that. You can get in front of people very, very quickly and start generating them results, far sooner than they would if they went down organic social or SEO based kind of solutions. At least that's my understanding of it, and definitely what we've seen working with our clients.
Yeah. So it's funny because one of the sort of analogies that I use with some of our clients is, or people just in general when they talk, is like, if you've ever been to like Disney World or any large, amusement park, but I'll use Disney World as the example. You go and there's 100 people in line for these rides and you're waiting, and then you see people that walk right by you and they paid a little bit of extra money for the fast pass and they cut right in front of you and they go to that shorter line and they get on the ride right away. They're on
Yeah.
the line, they're on the ride within 10 minutes where you're standing in line for an hour and a half. And I think that's a good analogy that really has resonated with people. It's like, look, like you can stand in line and you can get results. But if you're looking for quicker ROI, and just quicker results, like you're trying to make money now, you want your phone to ring, you want your website forms getting filled out now, paid is definitely almost always going to outperform any type of organic. So it's good to hear you sort of corroborate that, because I think there's still a lot of people, a lot of SEO agencies that are out there that, they scream from the mountaintops, like, SEO is the only way to generate traffic, to generate leads. And I think that's just not the case. Let's talk about Meta, because that's kind of how and why I met you. I was having some issues with a server side tracking setup. And funny enough, I just started looking around and like found you on YouTube. So I guess you could say I found you through SEO. I found you through searching YouTube. And your video was so helpful, man, because I could not figure out for the life of me. I was trying to improve our event match quality score inside of the Meta account for a client. And I thought that I had done everything correctly. In fact, I knew that I did. And that's why I was so frustrated, because I'm like, this is set up correct. And like, I still, for some reason, can't. And, your video helped me set this up correctly. And it was great. And like, this dude is legit. Like all the stuff that you were doing, like the Google Tag Manager stuff, and like State and all the stuff that I kind of learned from you. I'm like, I need to meet this guy and talk to this guy. But Meta is like a big part of what you do, and it's something that we are pivoting back towards from Google as well. It's, for me, and I don't know about with your clients and what you're doing, but it's a lower cost platform for businesses that might not have like huge budgets. I think the CPM is like whatever, a tenth of what you would pay in Google. I mean, you could have a $50 a day budget on Meta and still see some results. Whereas with Google, $50 a day is basically $0 a day, especially in my world. But talk to me about how Meta has, helped you guys get results for your clients. And then we'll talk about some of like the technical back end setup, because I think there's a lot of people, even marketing agencies, that are not doing it correctly and don't have it set up correctly. And therefore their clients might not be seeing results because the marketing agency like doesn't know what they don't know about it. But talk to me about Meta, man, because you guys seem to be killing it with Meta.
Yeah, sure. So we actually started with Meta. So back in the day when we first started our agency, we didn't really do much on Google. So Meta was the first platform that I kind of entered into in terms of the marketing. I kind of use it for my own brands initially, doing some kind of e-com, really like low level stuff. And then when we pivoted to working with other brands and taking them on as clients, Meta was that solution. So that was everything from like fitness brands, so doing like gym promotions for like local, really localized Meta ads, and then obviously more recently and what we've been doing for the last few years, where it's been e-commerce and info products. This is a great platform. I mean, we use Google and we use YouTube placements a lot as well for some of our info product brands because it works very well. But Meta is always a core component. It's either the one platform that we use, and then we kind of bring Google in afterwards, or we use the two, together to really get the best results and just expand the overall amount we can spend profitably, and also just kind of de-risk things. It's always good to have more than kind of one solution in place. But yeah, we've seen great results. And like you say, it can be a very good solution in terms of starting with a slightly lower budget. So things that we've seen, and I can only speak from my own experience, but when comparing it to like Google traffic, for example, for us, Meta, there seems a little bit of a shorter time frame from starting a campaign to actually seeing some results. With Google, I see it improves a lot over time, but it does take investment of time and money to kind of get at that point. So that's kind of one thing that I like about the Meta campaigns. And also we can be proactive in getting in front of people. So yeah, one of the other things that we really like about Meta is the ability for us to get in front of people proactively. So obviously with like Google search placement, they have to search something, and then off the back of that, they're responding, which again can be incredibly effective. But we're obviously limited by search volumes in certain industries, especially for like the info products that we promote. People aren't necessarily searching for those solutions. They're not searching for that stuff, even if they have a real strong intent and they're interested in it. So that's where with Meta ads that we can get in front of them. That's why I like YouTube as well, because we can do the same type of thing. We can be proactive. We can get our content in front of people and take them into a sales funnel without them directly searching for that specific solution. So those are kind of a few things that we've seen, and definitely a few elements of meta ads that I really like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in that because a lot of people don't really realize this, right? But like search, whether it's Google or YouTube or whatever, search in general is like demand capture, right? But there's a lot of power in demand gen, like generating brand awareness and getting out in front of people. To your point, like, what if you sell a product that doesn't have a lot of search volume? Like, should you invest in SEO? Or maybe there's so much search volume that it's so competitive that it's just a losing proposition. Like a lot of the insurance agencies that we work with, like when you go to Google and you're looking for like best insurance in Texas or best and lowest cost car insurance Texas, the results are dominated by large, nationally recognized brands, which we both know like Google loves those brands. Like it's not realistic for most insurance agencies to outrank Allstate, State Farm, Farmers, Geico, Progressive. Like it's just very difficult to compete in certain industries with search. Whereas, and I tell the clients all the time, I'm like, SEO and even Google ads to an extent, you're competing with those large brands. With Meta, you're sort of competing with the other local agencies in your market, which a lot of them aren't doing any advertising. So it's like, it's such from a competitive standpoint, it's far less competitive, even though there's a lot of people advertising on Facebook, but it's still, in my opinion, kind of like a lower hanging fruit for a lot of businesses. The technical setup, because again, this is kind of how I found you. Let's talk about that real quick, because I don't think a lot of people understand what goes into building out effective campaigns. Obviously, you need to have really good creatives. You need to have good copywriting skills, video content, your images need to be good, that kind of thing. But there's this whole other story to running successful campaigns on Meta, which is the server-side tracking, the Facebook conversions API. Talk real quick about that and maybe tell the people listening about the Facebook Pixel, because after iOS 14, right, the Pixel basically is, I don't want to say worthless, but it doesn't have the same tracking capabilities that it once had, right?
Yeah. So tracking is a really big one, and it's going to fuel the campaign performance over time. So what you're basically doing is you're giving Meta back a signal to say it's achieved a certain goal. And the more data you can provide Meta to say this is like who has taken this action, and that's sent back via the conversions API, that's that EMQ, that event match quality score, the better that can be, the better Meta can understand that it's done its job well, and then it can help by finding more people that are similar. So it goes beyond just reporting, because a lot of people think, okay, tracking is reporting, and that's what I'll tell my client. But the thing is, the Meta Ads Manager is not going to be accurate anyway. So like it's always going to be out by a little bit. So we don't personally use it for reporting. We're not going to tell our clients, this is the ROAS that Meta says. Yeah, we'll use things like Triple Whale, which is a lot more accurate, Iris, which is a lot more accurate, even just pulling data from CRMs and using UTM parameters and stuff. This kind of opens up a bigger topic, which is attribution, and kind of looking at, okay, well, how do you want to kind of do attribution? Over what timeframes, using what metrics, is it last touch point, first touch point, multi-touch point, like how do you want to do it? So that's a whole separate topic in how you would actually report accurately.
Right.
But just stripping away from that and looking more at kind of how to use, and the question you asked really, which is like, how does the EMQ score, how does the reporting, how's the tracking and that conversions API actually fuel campaign performance? Well, it comes back to giving Meta the right signals. If someone clicks on ad today and they fill in a form, and then we signal back to Facebook saying, this is the person that took this action, this is the action they took, and that's what we're optimizing for, then the system can kind of close that loop, and it knows what it's done, and it knows the performance, which means it can find more similar people. Kind of the same logic as like a lookalike audience, in the sense that we're saying, this is a group of people that have taken a thing we want, find more like them. It's kind of doing that in real time by giving it data. And if you don't give it any data, it's essentially blind. So it's kind of like, you're asking it to do a job, but it doesn't know if it's doing a job. So how can it do the job better? It can't. And that's where we just see really bad performance. At the very base level, we need some level of tracking. But then to really drive performance, we need to double down on those, kind of improve that EMQ score, like you mentioned. And that's by sending back high quality customer data. So when someone fills out a form or makes a purchase, we're actually capturing their name, email, and other variables that we can capture, and we're giving that data back. Now, some platforms do that like really well. So Shopify integrates with the Meta Conversions API quite seamlessly typically, and there's not too many issues in most cases. So we don't have to do like a more custom setup. But if you're using something like ClickFunnels, Go High Level even, it's not going to like instantly make that connection. Right. We have to use, we do it via Tag Manager, like you mentioned. and we'll use some custom code to pull the variables and put them in the right places. But that process, yeah, it is very, very important. If you're missing that data, it will have a tangible effect on campaign performance.
Yeah, it's so true, because once we got it dialed in, and this is not to brag or anything like this, because I hired you to sort of help with some of this stuff, but once we got it dialed in, it's crazy. Like, we have a couple clients. We have a insurance agency client in Florida. They're like in the Orlando area, and I mean, the day that we turned his campaign on, he got 2 leads. The next day, 2 leads. The next day, 3 leads. He's like getting 3 to 4 leads every single day. And he's one of those clients that came to us asking for like SEO. And I said, like, again, when do you want the clients, now or later? And it's just, yeah, it makes such a big difference. And I told you this, like, jokingly, you could like have a service for EMQ setups yourself, probably, and like make a ton of money, because it's something that I think definitely the average advertiser, like if you're a small business owner and you're trying to run your own Facebook ads, there's like a less than 1% chance that you're going to have this set up correctly. It's just these ad platforms like Facebook and Google, it's like they help people like us, right? Because we're the professionals that know how to set this stuff up. But it's like the average person has a very small chance of doing it correctly. So it's like, it's all the more reason why, if you're trying to do it, you do need to hire a professional. Like, I see so many clients and so many people that are trying to do this stuff themselves. And it's like, it rarely ever works. And that gives them a bad taste about the overall platform. Like, oh, Google ads doesn't work, or like Facebook ads doesn't work. And it's like, no, they work when you have everything set up properly, when you have all the boxes checked off and that kind of thing. So it's interesting, man. And like, I really actually love, I don't know about you, I think you do too, because you're pretty well versed with like Tag Manager and whatnot, but like, I love the data and the tracking side of things. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I love firing up a brand new Google Tag Manager container and like setting everything up and getting it set up correctly. And we did like a call with a couple clients, and they were watching me do it, and they were like, we would have never known to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. But talk about that part of it, because you were talking a little bit about like the attribution and stuff, and like maybe even touch on like Hyros, because I've played around with Hyros. That thing is awesome, but it's obviously it is expensive, right?
It is, yeah. So third-party tracking tools like Triple Hyros, they're really useful, and we've used them. And we do use them ongoing for our clients. It really comes down to spend, like you say, because there's a kind of a tipping point where having more accurate attribution is good, but it's not really needed in the early days. Because if you have a small budget and the client, you're kind of making recommendations for the client in terms of, okay, how much should we spend and where should we allocate that? What I wouldn't recommend and what I don't is when a client's starting out and they have a few £1,000 ad budget, we don't really want to burden them with an additional cost. Now, Triple L is a lot more affordable, but Hyros is a lot more expensive. However, they are great tools when you start spending more. So for our clients where we are spending a lot more, it gives us a lot more visibility in terms of tracking. First of all, just more accurate data. So the way that Facebook is going to basically do attribution, and you can set different attribution models within the account, but fundamentally, they're going to be like by default tracking view through conversion. So people that have viewed an ad but not necessarily clicked on it and then are taking a conversion. And I also believe they're doing quite a lot of conversion modeling. So it's not necessarily 100% accurate. Well, it isn't 100% accurate at all. And it can be off by quite a significant amount. Whereas with these other tools, they're tracking the click through to the conversion a lot more accurately, and you can kind of piece together that journey, and just gives more visibility, more accurate data, and they give you the option to view different attribution models as you're kind of doing the media buying. So you can look at, what's happened between a certain date range post-click or in that date range, regardless of the date they clicked, or, multi-touch point or last touch point, first click, things like that. So you can use these different models to paint pictures. What I like to do is I like to look at more than one. So I don't want to just look at one thing and use it as like the be all and end all, because different campaigns can have different types of contributions. And it's not necessarily to say that, everything should, it's not necessarily to say that the thing that got the last click and got the sale is the one that worked, because you have to look at the overall customer journey and everything else that's kind of got that customer to that point. That's where things like retargeting ads can look great. But then if you just turned off, in fact, I had a client months and months ago, maybe even a year ago now, who we came on board and they had this, I did an audit of their account. And essentially what's happening is they had one retargeting campaign that had quite a large budget, and this was getting all of the performance. And then they had this other campaign that was basically just doing nothing. And they were like They were relying solely on their retargeting. And I said to them, look, the problem is, although this is okay, at some point we're just going to burn through these retargeting audiences. Then they're not going to be as effective as they are right now. We need to focus on top of funnel
Mm-hmm.
conversions, and we need to reduce that CPA on the top of funnel. And although that CPA is going to be way more expensive than what it is on the retargeting, if we don't do this, what we're going to see is basically this retargeting thing is going to drop off. And it kind of did, and we ended up focusing on the top of funnel, and it started to work a lot better, and really give them that lift that they needed. But
so I think like what you just said, there's a lot of truth to that, because I think the thing that most business owners struggle with, especially small business owners, right? Like they don't have a marketing team. They don't really have that top of funnel brand awareness, right? And like I try to preach this to our clients all the time. Like, like brand awareness is the single most powerful lead generation mechanism that exists. Like the goal, I think, with most businesses, is once people know you, know, like, and trust you, like you don't need to maybe spend as much on advertising or SEO or whatever, because you have the brand recognition where people just come to you and because they know, like, and trust you. And I think that's really where Meta fits into the equation for most businesses, is like, if people don't know you, they don't know you exist, like that's a problem. And I think especially in like very competitive industries like insurance, there's insurance agencies on every corner everywhere, right? Like if you go to Google Maps or you just type in insurance agency near me, there's going to be anywhere from 10 to 20 insurance agents within a 5 to 10 mile radius. Like, and in my opinion, and maybe you have your opinion about this, the more competitive the industry is that you're in, the more top of funnel brand awareness you need to generate, the more you need to advertise, right? Because if you're the only guy in town, people are going to have to do business with you. But if there's a million of the same business, it's like, even like with search, you could rank number one, but when people go to search and they're looking for an insurance agent, there's so many different choices, right? I mean, I think it's like analysis, or what do they say, paralysis by analysis. Like, who do I call? Like, okay, this guy's got 20 Google reviews. This guy's got 100. Okay. But like, people want to do business with a brand that they know, that they like.
yes.
So I think in your opinion, like, do you see that with some of your clients too? Like they just like, they're frustrated because they're not getting the sales or the leads, but it's like, no one really knows about you.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that's one of the biggest problems in general for most businesses, exactly like you say. And I was reading like a recent report, and it was basically saying that more and more going into this year, and I think it's going to compound, as we progress into next year and following years. People, they have, like you say, more choice than ever. So they're doing more due diligence. They've got more good quality brands. It's not just like there's one brand or two brands or three brands that are doing, that have a similar product. There's many, many options for these people. So as a customer, you have a lot of choice, and the purpose of the advertising has to be to take them from that, like, completely unaware of your brand and your product, but they have a problem, and nurturing them through that funnel. And that isn't just going to mean that you can turn on an ad day one and spend a few pounds and suddenly get a customer and suddenly everything's working. Like, and that kind of, unfortunately, is the perception of some clients. Obviously, larger brands, they understand this, and it's an easier conversation. But a newer company, definitely, we've experienced companies come to us who are a lot newer, and they kind of say, look, what's the expectation? Like, if I spend a few grand, and what am I going to get? And they don't really understand that. Sure, you can go very direct response and get a return, and it can be profitable. But there's also, if you don't have a unique product, or there's nothing that's completely going to make you stand out against everyone else, it's hard to get that direct response return instantly. And there's a lot of testing that goes in, and people do need to see the brand over and over again to make that purchasing decision. And just because they clicked on it today and didn't buy, doesn't mean your ad hasn't worked, doesn't mean it hasn't had a contribution. And that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about the retargeting versus like top of funnel. And you need both. You need a full funnel approach, to kind of get the outcome that you want. And just because one ad or one creative isn't your highest performer, it doesn't mean it isn't having contribution in the account to the overall outcome. So that is definitely something we see. It's a balance though, because you do need enough direct response performance to justify. So, for clients that are spending a lot more, there's a large ad budget, there's a lot of risk on the line, if you like. So the direct response component needs to be good enough. Like, it needs to be justifiable, but then you also it kind of needs to be with the context that there's more to it than just the thing that got the final touch point and the final click and then the conversion event, basically.
It's funny too, because there's a lot of like, basically, what I would say, like untrackable ROI with, with demand generation. For an example, this is kind of crazy, but I saw an ad, there's a landscaping company not far from me, and they're running ads in our area. And I've seen these guys on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot for the last couple of weeks. Never talk to them. I don't need a landscaper, but I see these guys over and over again. And it's funny because a buddy of mine was like, yeah, we need to get like our pavers or whatever, like our walk needs to be redone. Like, do you know anybody? And I'm like, yeah, this company like Andrew's Landscaping. So I said call them, and like this landscaping company is probably going to get a customer from a referral from me. Like, I've never done business, like we don't know each other, but people have recency bias. Like, if they see a brand over and over and over again, they are probably going to do business with them, whether they're good or not. It's just funny how that game works.
Yeah, you do business
So
with people you know fundamentally. Like, I know that I've done business with people who are not necessarily the best solution, but they're the people that I know and I'm aware of them. So just there is something to be said for just being in front of people and like maintaining that level of consistency when trying to win a customer. And like you say, that story you just told about the kind of customer journey that they could not attribute back to an ad, but
yeah,
it
they
came from that. So you get this
exactly.
overall like uplift when you're spending enough and when you're generating enough. You get an uplift that is not, that is non attributable, but it does come from running a lot of paid advertising. It does come from having a presence out there, and that's where you have to look kind of holistically at the whole performance, as well as looking very, very detailed at, okay, which ad is working. But then it's also like zooming out and saying, okay, well, when I spend this much, and one of our kind of tracking, how we report to our clients internally, is we also have tracking sheets essentially where we have all spend versus all revenue for a business. So that's where we're kind of looking at just zooming right out away from any detailed performance. We're saying, when you spend more, does your business make more? When you spend less, does your business make less? Forget the details of it. And having that and tracking that performance over time gives us a lot of visibility to say, well, we know that there's an uplift coming from this additional spend. And then it's very justifiable and it's very clear to see. And it's also clear to see when it's not working. When we spend, and we run tests before for brands where we said, right, we need to spend more, and we have done, and the revenue is like retained the exact same. It's like, okay, it's not having the effect we want. At best, it's just kind of maybe taking conversions that were happening anyway, but it's not
Yeah.
really doing anything significant. But on the more positive side, we do see that kind of uplift. And that's what we're really looking for in conjunction with the more detailed reporting that we discussed.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll tell one last story because I want to respect your time, but we have a client. It's actually one of our very first clients. He's been with us for close to 10 years. And he's one of those guys, like, we talk about good and bad clients, and there's definitely, there's good and bad clients. This guy's a great client. He said, and I remember we talk about it all the time as we have like follow-up calls, but in the very beginning, I remember him saying like, I know that if I'm running ads, like I'm not gonna micromanage you, Chris. Like, I know that doing this long term, I'm gonna get more business. It's just an accumulate. It's just like, to your point, like, it's when you market that top of funnel brand awareness, like, it's going to come back to you in some form or fashion. It might be right away. Hopefully it's right away, but it's also, there's that residual effect that takes place. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. But so let's review real quick before we wrap this up. I guess, I wanted to talk about Meta, but really we ended up talking about like demand gen. But I think some of the reasons why, if you're an insurance agent listening to this, or a landscaper, or e-commerce brand, I think some of the takeaways here are there's a big difference between demand capture and demand generation. Also, I think there's a lot of power in that top of funnel brand awareness. And that's where a platform like Meta really steps in, because I think that's where a lot of people struggle. Just not enough people know about them. So it's difficult to really scale when that's the case. And then, to your point, the tracking and like the EMQ and like the server side stuff, the technical back end attribution is just absolutely critical in running successful campaigns. It's just, you can have a perfect front end, you could have the perfect video that you shot and edited and the perfect images, right? But if you're not setting up conversions correctly and doing the back end tracking, it's going to fail. Am I missing anything? Is there anything that you want to add to that?
To be fair, yeah, I think that's you've covered that. And yeah, I completely agree with the points you made. And yeah, like you were saying about Meta and the tracking and the kind of attribution and the importance of it, it's very important. And something you said at the beginning is like even agencies miss this stuff, and that is very, very true. Sometimes we come in just to do this service, and we look at kind of how agencies have done it, and it is incomplete and it is hurting the results. And the other thing to say is that it isn't the only component, and you touched on that. Like, it's not, you can have the perfect tracking setup, and if your creative is terrible and your messaging is wrong,
Exactly.
that is not going to work. So it isn't to say that this is like the thing that gets the result. It isn't, but it's a core component, and without it, your setup is incomplete. The same as without a great ad, and without great copy, and without a good customer journey, and a good hook, and a good offer, a good business, basically. Like, without all of the things that you need, this is just another one of those components, and it's very, very essential for performance. And Meta's a great platform to kind of go full circle to what you're saying at the beginning. It's a great platform for getting in front of people proactively. It can be low cost in terms of lead gen. It can be great quality as well. Like, sometimes we've seen with some of our clients, we market on Google, we market on LinkedIn as well, and Facebook. And sometimes, LinkedIn can be seen as a much higher cost but higher quality platform. Google can also typically be higher quality in some cases, but Meta can also be extremely high quality. And it comes down to feeding it with the right signals, like we've discussed, getting the campaign messaging correct. And when you get all of those components aligned, you can have very good scale plus very good quality, and ultimately a very profitable campaign. And I think that's what anyone's probably looking for who's potentially watching this and sort of considering Meta ads for their own business, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, man, I greatly appreciate you coming on. I love these types of conversations and just getting somebody else's point of view. I mean, from the e-commerce side of things, it's just a completely different world than where I live. But where can people find you, man, if they want to connect with you?
Best is just to go to my website. So ukbmarketing.com, just head over to our website. We've got kind of everything that we do on there, reviews and testimonials, our services, and the whole kind of thing. So if we can be of help, then please just reach out to us via our website. But that would be the best place.
Perfect. And selfless plug for us. If you're an insurance agency listening, you're trying to generate leads very quickly, hit me up, advisorevolve.com. Thanks to Jack, we have our system humming, dialed in, and I can send referrals or recommendations from current clients as well. So, Jack, thanks again, brother, for being on, man. And
thanks for having me.
I can't promise that I won't bug you again for advice in the future.
No problem. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for listening. Tune in to the next episode of the Rise and Bind podcast. Peace.